Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the July meeting of the Development Management Committee. We have no practice alarm today, so if the alarm sounds, can you please make your way through these doors and out onto the car park where you'll be supervised. If you've got a mobile phone, could you turn it to silent or turn it off, please? One of the things you won't know is there are no speakers around this room. The speakers are in the microphone. So if you find it difficult to hear, gently pull one of them towards you and you'll be able to hear better. Don't grab it by the stem, just bring it forward. So the microphones are in here, sorry, the speakers are in here, not around the room. And a warm welcome to the public watching our podcast, our webcast, and this meeting will be on our YouTube site and archived in line with the South Norfolk District Archive Policy. An agenda has been published on our website, plus any updates which are in. And today's agenda has 4 applications. This is a meeting held in public, not a public meeting. So we have registered public speaking in place, and it starts with the town or parish council, then objectors, then the applicant agent supporter, followed by the local district councillor. And you'll be invited to come up to this public speaking desk, and I'm going to ask the first person up to move that to the middle microphone when they get there. Each group can speak for up to 5 minutes, and if you wish, you may use more than one speaker, but you have to share the time. We will not go beyond the 5 minutes. And I will tell you at that point, or my colleague here will tell you with 1 minute to go, and then I'll ask you to come to your conclusion at 5 minutes. Planning officers will present the key points of each application for the committee, and the members will determine by a show of hands the applications before us, and I'll give you the result of the vote. And please note, if you've registered to be a public speaker, your name will be recorded in the minutes and kept on record indefinitely. But with reorganisation coming, I'm not sure what indefinitely now means. So apologies there, please.
Yes, Chair. We received apologies from absence from Councillor Roberts, Councillor Rosen, Councillor Pearl with Councillor Hooton appointed substitute, Councillor D Thompson with Councillor Bills appointed substitute, and Councillor Webber with Councillor Spratt appointed substitute. Thank you.
I've no urgent business. Nobody's come with urgent business. Declaration of interest on behalf of the committee. We've been lobbied on item application 1 and on application 3. Minutes of the last meeting, members, are you...
Apologies, Chair. Councillor Hooton has a declaration. Councillor Hooton has a declaration.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, Chair. As a Cabinet member, I will exempt myself from, I think it's item 4.
Okay, thank you. Members who were here, minutes of the last meeting, any problems? No, all agreed? And now we're going to go to application number 1, which is the former Feather Factory site, Park Road Dis. And we've got Richard who's going to do the honours. When you're ready, Richard.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, as I've just said, we have had some IT difficulties today, so we don't currently have any access to our corporate drive. So, unfortunately, that includes my notes for today's presentation. So I will be doing it by memory, but hopefully I'll be able to go through in some detail what we have today. So, just to start with the update sheet. We obviously had the update sheet issued yesterday. We did mention in that update sheet that we'd had, at the very late last minute, 33 letters of support, generic letters of support. Since they've actually been processed and looked at in some detail, and obviously that was just following the update sheet's publication, it has been clarified there are actually 15 letters of support. I'll just go through now. We've had opportunities to read through the brief points that have been made. They refer to need, the care home being a good idea, prevents hospital admissions, people getting older, convenient next to a food store, and someone would also like a roundabout onto Park Road. So that's the representations clarified. Also, as an update today, at 5.83 of the paper, it talks about an increase of 34.05 B&G units for habitat. It's actually meant to be 16.43, so slight clarification there, but I think that's everything on the clarified on the update. So here we are. This is the location plan, the site edged red. The site is 0.65 hectares. It's expanded to 0.7 hectares based on a inclusion of the red lines take on board the access road that currently serves the Aldi, which I will come on to in a minute. So this is the site location within this itself. It's to the sort of south of Park Road, the A1066, busy thoroughfare through the town. Generally on the south side of the town centre, it's starting to transition from the commercial town centre environment into a more residential area, and that's the point at which this site lays, that transition between the two. Generally speaking, you're in quite good proximity to the town centre, about 175 metres away. Also locally around here, you've got the local bus station on Park Road. You've also got a number of food stores. So the new Aldi that has arrived near to the site is also in a run where you've also got Morrison's and Tesco's in close proximity. So this is the site edged red. As you can see here, this is when it was being used as a construction compound for the new Aldi. So this was taken around about 2024, I believe. Obviously, the site was a former factory, and we'll come on some slides showing that in a minute, but for all intents and purposes, it is a brownfield site. You've also got residential properties on the west, and then you've also got another piece of vacant commercial land, industrial land to the south, which is also subject to a pending application, which has recently arrived. So this is the site, the former Feather Mills factory site. Obviously, as you can see, there were a number of traditional sort of corrugated steel type buildings, fairly basic in appearance, generally one story in height of varying degrees, with some open space around. Obviously, it is an area in transition. This is all part of what we call the Waveney Quarter in the District Neighbourhood Plan. So this is what you would have seen in 2022 from Park Road looking south. This is obviously the former factory buildings prior to their demolition. As you can see, fairly utilitarian in appearance, basic, and obviously they've been added to over time. This is the proposed care home building. It's a 66-bed care home. It involves 27 parking spaces accessed off this spine road that's already serving the Aldi food store. You've also got notably a run of trees, large mature trees on the northern boundary, which lie just within the conservation area, which are also on the tree preservation order. Number of lime and sycamore trees there. You've also got obviously the residential properties of Water Gardens and Piper Gardens on the west and southwest. The Aldi store is now operating, has been since last year, and you can see the car park serving that just to the east of the site. The care home itself, it's primarily a model format that L&T, the applicants produce based on conventional layouts and conventional ways of working, and the main entrance would be in that corner between the two wings. This is what the building would look like. You've got a three-storey proposal here with a hipped roof and gable elements. You've got a number of different materials, mainly brick with some render, and also a cladding system, a green cladding system and the light render. You've also got the grey windows and doors and solar panels to all roofs. As you can see, obviously, we've got the north elevation on the top image, which is the one that you see from Park Road. You've got the east elevation, which would face the Aldi. Then you've got the south elevation facing the vacant development site. And then the west elevation at the bottom is the one that is viewed from resident properties on that side of the development with the main access in the corner. This is the set floor plans. It's, as you'd expect, pretty much the same all the way throughout the floors. So you've got a sort of simple system where you've got a front entrance coming into a reception area. You've got communal lounge in the corner. The corridors route through centrally and bedrooms off either corridor. Kitchens at the bottom. You have lift access as well to the top. And stair cores as well in each corner of each wing. This is the ground floor, just showing that in a bit more detail. It gives you an idea of the sort of the bedroom sizes and also the communal space. This first floor, very similar. You have got a tea room, which then leads onto a balcony area above the front entrance on that corner. You've also got some on the northern point of the northern wing. You've got some further sort of habitable areas, quiet lounges, etc. And that's the second floor there. You've got again a slight difference. You've got a library added and a bar area at the northern point again. This is a photograph taken of the new access into the Aldi, but also the spine road which will serve these other development sites. You can see the site there behind the TPO trees which line onto Park Road. Slightly further closer into the site now, as you can see, you've got the food store there starting to come into your shot, and you've got obviously the resident properties in the background there to Water Gardens, Piper Gardens. This is taken a bit further along Park Road, looking into the site between the trees, gives you an understanding of, you know, the sort of the amount of vegetation down on the west boundary. As you can see, pretty much as you expect, cleared site. This is a view north from the Aldi, then the service road, and obviously, as you can see, the site is just simply just a cleared brownfield site. You see the sort of the treatment that some of the residents have got on their properties, which generally do face towards the east. So slightly further up the spine road and looking now more west, you've got the properties there, Water Gardens, Piper Gardens, shown a bit clearer. So now I've gone into one of these properties to take some photos with their agreement, and you've got here the view from 3 Water Gardens, roughly from the point of where their property starts. You can obviously see the food store, the Aldi in the image there, just popping up above the wall, and obviously you can see some further development in the distance. Again, another image from number 3 Water Gardens. You can see from the arrows I've produced in the bottom left corner where I'm stood. And again, this is at the first floor. I think it's a bedroom window, this one. Again, looking out towards the development site. So this is now from the garden of 3 Piper's Gardens, which is a bit further south of where I've just been stood. And you can see looking sort of looking east again, you can see the development site. You can see more clearly the TPO trees for a bit of context. This is the landscape plan that's been produced. You can see, hopefully you can pick out there's some slightly darker coloured trees, which are, if I can just hover over them, these ones here, which are the heavy-duty trees, which would be the larger specimens being planted. There were some native species and sort of like some rowan and white beam off memory, and I think one or two non-native species as well. You've also got some of these trees in this sort of area in the communal gardens, orchard trees, the sort of likes of apple and pear trees, and some other specimens dotted around the car park like silver birch, etc., just to give you a bit of context as to the proposed landscaping. This image here, this illustration shows a section drawn through the northern wing with the perception of what that landscaping would look like, and the properties to Water Gardens, Piper Gardens on the left of that image. Gives you an idea of what the architects feel that will look like in the future. This image again is back from Park Road. If you can remember where one of the photos was taken, again shows illustration of what the perception of what the landscaping would appear as, looking towards the south, and obviously again you can see you know, a number of the trees have reached maturity, so this would be some point in the future, maybe 15 years time perhaps. So I have put a slide here which is one that's nearest to us, so you might well be familiar with it. It's just down the road, just next to the Lidl development, another L&T scheme, 66 bed. This one was built 2023. I think it's obviously been opened for 3 years now. It's, you know, a very similar format for all intents and purposes. It's a similar material mix. You can also see the landscape, and that's gone in 3 years later. This is, you know, what we've got on site. This image here is taken from the daylight and sunlight assessment that was submitted quite late into the process, just around about the time the committee papers were being produced, and this shows the image of the building relative to the resident properties on Water Gardens, Piper Gardens. So just coming on to the daylight and sunlight assessment, this is based on a BRE, that's Building Research Establishment guidance, that looks at how much daylight sunlight a window will receive during the day based on vertical sky component. So it's based on existing conditions as well as proposed, and how much difference there is, as well as whether it meets the threshold for allowing sufficient light. Not surprisingly, you know, the daylight and sunlight assessment does confirm that it considers that there will be sufficient daylight into neighbouring properties. There is one property, number 3, Water Gardens, that would be affected more than others, and that's what I've got here just to show you. But essentially, the daylight and sunlight assessment is a tool really just to look at that precise issue in terms of internal habitable rooms. What the daylight and sunlight assessment also produces is the impact on the external amenity areas, and whether an area has the ability to receive 2 hours of sunlight during that period of the day for at least 50% of its area. Now, in this case, again, not surprisingly, it does meet that threshold. It's quite a high bar. So you know, we don't dispute the findings of the daylight and sunlight assessment that's been submitted. What we have said though on the daylight and sunlight assessment, and what we've recognised, is that there will be quite a significant impact in terms of some properties at specific times of the year, and particularly with these resident gardens, particularly in the springtime, early to mid-morning, we think there will be quite a substantial amount of overshadowing of some gardens, and that is part of our overall recommendation in terms of our concerns around residential amenity. This is a view of the main entrance. As you'd look from the west, you can obviously see that balcony area as well that I talked about earlier. This is a view from the spine road that we were looking at a bit earlier, and this is the sort of point nearest roughly to where the entrance is to the Aldi food store. So this slide here shows the site's location in terms of flood zones 2 and 3. You will notice on the update sheet that we've got an update that we're recommending not to recommend that reason for refusal 2 is part of the overall recommendation. I'll come on to why that is as we go through, but basically, whilst the slides were still had been formed, I thought it'd be worth just showing the context to this. So this is flood zone 2 in the lighter colour, and it just shows where the site is there, as you can see, affected on more the southern part of the site. And that's fluvial flooding. So this image here, this slide is the EA's flood GIS mapping again. This is in terms of surface water flood risk, and again shows where the site's affected. Again, it's more towards the sort of southern, southwest corner, southern boundary. So we had found a site that we felt that was listed in what they call the sequential test, an exercise that the applicants have to produce, where we do find development within flood zone 2, residential development like this. As part of that background of papers that was submitted, there was a list of sites within this sequential test that considered whether there was a preferable site as the requirement of the sequential analysis within the NPPF. The NPPF obviously directs you towards any sites that might have a lower flood risk if they're available, deliverable or suitable. This one was discounted at the time by the applicants as not being suitable, and it wouldn't become suitable until the end of the plan period when the site to the north would come forward for residential development. That site has been allocated and it is expected to come forward for residential development at some point in the plan period. We had actually discharged conditions on a particular assisted living scheme, which was not unfamiliar in terms of size, slightly larger site, this one, and we felt it offered a really good alternative, and it did seem to be marketed on the internet in the checks that I was doing, but it does seem to be that since we've done some further checks and the applicant's done the same, that actually that site is not available, and whilst it's still a vacant brownfield site which could accommodate a care home of this scale, the site doesn't appear to be available, so we have had to agree that actually that reason for refusal 2 is not one that we would wish to substantiate any appeal. That shows the site that we're talking about at Nelson Road relative to the site in question today. That's the Nelson Road site. Again, the Nelson Road site, just showing its current condition. And again, that just shows the site in terms of the floods risk mapping. Obviously, you can see it's outside the flood zones 2 and 3. And that's the surface water mapping as well. So all these slides were produced before the update sheet, obviously just showing you them for context, clarification. This slide shows the access proposals in terms of the entry onto the spine road. There has been quite a bit of back and forth with highways as the County Council consultee, which eventually have meant that they have decided not to object to the scheme, but very much on the basis that this arrangement here, whereby you'd have white lining for keep clear, Hatching as well provided would need to be part of any approval to ensure that there was no blockage of the access so close to Park Road, not to cause an issue of the free flow of traffic. So coming to some benefits, the proposal will undoubtedly have a very good economic package to the local economy, providing around about 50 to 60 jobs, around about 47 full-time equivalent jobs, that is. And obviously that's a recognised benefit of the scheme. Some heritage considerations now. Here we are in terms of where I'm stood, where the yellow star is, looking more towards the sort of north/northeast. We did get one representation from one of the residents in one of these listed buildings there on Denmark Street, sort of having concerns that there would be an impact on the setting of their listed building from the 3-storey proposal. We've had a good look at this. We think that there might be some slight views of this at upper storey levels of some of these properties, but we think it'll be less than substantial harm given the amount of view that you will have. You can also see in that photo the Aldi store, although the Aldi store's a lot lower. You can just about see it through the break in the trees. We don't feel that there is going to be anything more than less than substantial harm, and the public benefits of this scheme would in terms of the economic job creation, would outweigh that harm. So the key points we just want to sort of focus on here. So the proposal for a care home as an accessible and specialist form of housing can be supported and is supported in principle under the GNLP Policy 5. No problems with this site being offered as a care home development site. But that's the important bit. Unless there are significant adverse impacts that justify refusal, just to be clear, the 5-year housing land supply and the tilt balance does not apply on this Class 2 development, unlike a Class 3 residential scheme, for instance. Policy 2, the regeneration of the Waverley Quarter of the Disson District Neighbour Plan is again important. It focuses on the area being a central point for leisure recreation and accepts some residential development if sensitive in scale and design. Benefits include the provision of specialist housing, 66 beds, and the economic impacts through construction, operation and staffing, which will be approximately 47 to 48 full-time equivalent jobs. The impacts, however, are considered to be significant upon residential amenity, the scale and the dominance, the overbearing nature, the orientation, the overlooking and some overshadowing. The sequential tests concerns as to another more suitable site have now been considered to fallen away, but we've taken a fresh look and we still think that the reason for refusal 1 stands on its own grounds, and therefore overall the impacts are considered from that to be significant enough to outweigh the benefits of the scheme, and therefore refusal is recommended, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Members, any questions of Richard? Gary?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Richard, for the report. Obviously, you state one of the reasons for refusal is dominance, overlooking, overshadowing. Were any mitigation measures considered or could be required that would address them?
Yep, so I mean, basically the landscaping is important here, and obviously, the landscaping will have some effect over time, probably 15 years of maturity. There is, some level of existing vegetation in terms of hedgerows and some trees within the gardens of residential properties that already do provide something of a screen, but generally it's pretty open on that boundary. So it would take a number of years before those trees that are shown in that landscape plan would take some maturity. Whilst we can look at the species and the conditions and so on, we've obviously looked at this other scheme down the road, and I think it's fair to say that it does take some time to reach maturity, and I think I think obviously whilst you can rely on landscaping to a certain extent, obviously during the winter, that's not going to be a situation that we can really rely on. So whilst, yes, we have looked at and wondered whether there was more we could do, we've, considered that given the scale of the scheme at 3 stories, that's only going to do so much, particularly in the winter time.
And that won't be a full screen across the whole piece. It will just be looking at the planting. There'll be some trees. And the 12-metre high, that was before the pitch roof. So it's 12 metres plus a bit more. And then David.
Richard, just an odd question really. Are the fire services a statutory consultee on a building this size that houses elderly people?
No, they're not. Obviously we do, in terms of the sort of flood risk side of things, whilst obviously there is potential that, there could be a flood event, generally speaking, it's going to be a low level flood event, which shouldn't prevent access via that access point for emergency vehicles. So we would have, as part of any approval, a condition that would have an emergency and evacuation plan. And, we would certainly obviously at all times try and liaise with the relevant authorities. I think probably on this one, the fire service, we do involve the Environment Agency at times in these sort of documents. We might involve the fire agency, the fire rescue service as a consultee, although they're not statutory, just to sort of flag the plan if obviously we got to that point.
But it would have to be built to specific standards for fire safety.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. David?
Thank you, Chairman. It sort of follows on from my colleague Gary. I'm concerned over the impact of this on the residential houses around. So, for example, I have in front of me 3 Piper's Gardens you showed us. Would it be possible to show with your arrow key thing where that building would show on that picture?
I'll just bring up the photo. So from here,
Well, that one, that one or the next one, yeah.
it's very hard to say. I mean, obviously the oldie scheme is single story up to a certain height, in some distance away. I don't have an illustration of what that would look like. I mean, the applicant has, obviously put down some distances here, which are between 30 and 40 metres away, and we don't dispute that. That's fine. I think obviously the height will, be considerably higher than what you see in terms of these buildings in the distance. I think particularly the 3rd story is the one that really concerns us in terms of that, that whole width of windows and the level of habitable accommodation, habitable openings that would look towards the west. So it's very hard to say, but it's substantially higher than what you see here at sort of eye level in the sort of rear of their property.
Sorry, the one you've got nearby, that's not in a residential area at all, is it?
So
Right next to, again, it's next to Aldi.
Yeah, so this is part of the Broadland Gates area, which is sort of wider development, mixed-use development area, and it's next to, this one is a Lidl, this one in this case, next to the Lidl or on the other side of the road from it. So you've got other development sites around, you can just see in the aerial photo in the bottom left corner. So yes, it is a slightly different context, well, very different, I'll say. So yeah, we didn't have any concerns with obviously this proposal in that setting.
Live at 3 Water Gardens. My husband and I, who are both retired, really enjoy our small back garden. We planted every flower, plant and bush and laid the lawn. Our home was designed and built with planning permission. Our home was designed and built with planning permission granted by South Norfolk Council, so that our garden did not overlook any of our neighbours' gardens on either side, and with our garden not being overlooked as well. This private area will be lost. We use it all year round, with our patio area being lit and heated. Without any doubt, this enormous proposed care home will take away our privacy. Every inch of our back garden will be overlooked, as well as our lounge, our dining kitchen and 2 main bedrooms. The occupants in the care home will spend most of their time looking out of their windows or sitting on a sky balcony, all of which will face our home, and our neighbours will be completely overlooked. We can already see customers at Aldi, which is much further away. When the lights are on, we can actually see inside Aldi. This proposal is significantly nearer and more than double the height of Aldi. It would be out of keeping when looking at the height of all surrounding properties. It will set a damning precedent for other proposed builds in Diss. There will be overshadowing for us with this overbearing building. We will lose natural daylight we get in our garden and all the many rooms that face the site. All these rooms will be darkened, being rooms we use the most and each day. Policy DM 3.13 is key. It requires that particular regard will be paid, avoiding overlooking, loss of private residential amenity space, loss of daylight, overshadowing and overbearing impact, and states that planning permission will be refused where proposed development would lead to an excessive or unreasonable impact on existing neighbouring occupants. This proposal will do all these things. If you're in any doubt about this, please defer your decision and carry out a site inspection at our homes to see for yourself. I've got photographs, please, to refer to. We're losing time. Can we just stop? The first. This is the view. Yeah, this is the view I took on my mobile phone with me sitting on my bed. The next photograph, please. This is the view from our dining kitchen, and the final one is our patio area. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Glenn Smith, and myself and my wife live at 3 Pipers Gardens next door to Townsend and Kevin. We've enjoyed living here for coming up to 20 years, and our boundary is the closest to the proposed development. The proposed scale and size of the building is very, very overbearing and overshadows all the houses it would be adjacent to. It's out of proportion to its environment and location, and it would tower over all of our houses and gardens. It would mean a total loss of privacy, and the enjoyment of our homes and gardens would be lost. Approximately 15 to 18 plus windows and balconies would overlook us, meaning we would be forced to live in a goldfish bowl. Also, the residents who would live in the care home would also lack privacy, as we and our neighbours would in turn overlook them. Our bedroom would face their bedroom windows in a very close proximity. We would be forced to live behind closed blinds and drawn curtains to retain any level of privacy. The loss of light and amenity, it would block sunlight for varying hours every day through the year, casting shadow into our gardens where there was previously sunshine. The glare and disruption caused by many, many solar panels on a pitched roof angled towards our homes through that day, and the extensive glaring external lighting in the evening would be intolerable. And bear in mind that all of our bedroom windows will face onto the proposed development. The design of the location of the services for the home, total disregard for our well-being and enjoyment of our homes. There was a blank canvas to draw their plans, and yet they chose to site the services right next to where we all live, to our gardens and our boundaries. A solar PV store, which carries a fire risk. The bins area, which will create odours, constant noise and rodent risk. The deliveries in the kitchen and the extraction are all the closest point to our boundaries. The staff would probably take smoking breaks, again out in that area, just the other side of our small wall. The communal garden, again, just over the other side of a very small wall of our garden. If this goes ahead, one of the biggest concerns of this construction would be the piling. When Audi was being built, there was extensive piling which shook our houses for 12 weeks, 8 hours a day, every single day, and caused significant damage to ours and 6 other properties. all in all, and also just on a personal note, my wife and I gave up a thriving childminding business when the Audi construction began because of safeguarding. It's on hold. A development like this would mean we would never be able to resume our business again.
Thank you. Just stay there for a second. There may be some questions. Any questions at all, members? No, you got off lightly. So if you just turn the microphone off and then take your place again. And now we've got the applicant, Joe. Hello, Joe.
Before we start, some of the plans in the presentation were the wrong ones, and some of the visuals shown were the superseded versions.
Sorry, if you just sit down for a second. And your question is?
Some of the visuals shown in the presentation were superseded versions of the drawing, so they're not correct.
Of your drawing?
Of our care home, yeah.
Is it major differences?
Yes, it's the whole roof form and the materials, and that's, which I don't know if it's anything to do with your IT issues you mentioned, but those are the old flat roof ones.
They are, to be fair. Yeah, that's what's in that, but that is right, yeah.
So what we're saying now is that it isn't a pitch roof.
It is a pitch roof, yeah.
That's the old flat roof, which is actually
Right. So a pitch roof adds some height to it, and there are solar,
That's a parapet on that one, so
Right.
that reduces.
and there are solar panels on the pitch
Yes.
roof. Okay, so we understand
the-
that, members. Yeah.
The elevations are correct, so maybe.
Is it possible to show us visuals, because also the landscaping was updated on the visuals as well?
Yeah, they're on IDOCs.
Richard, did you hear the last bit?
Sorry.
The landscaping was updated as well when we submitted the new visuals, so I don't know if it might be possible to please show the correct ones and then using the correct scheme.
If we can get them up on the IT, let's see what we can do. Can we get it up?
The image on the briefing note, yes, but it was the
From
correct one.
every try, are you able to go to that email that you had from IT that said,
Not on here 'cause it's not connected to
oh,
it.
that's it, not,
Would it be on the planning portal?
yeah, but I don't think that's working. The only way you can do it is through that IT link. Try the portal, see if it works. See if it works. So if you go down to, so if you go down to, is it that, is it?
I think it's like back up at the moment.
Try that, just try it. And then, find that application. And then that one then. Alright, brilliant, yeah. Yeah, nice one.
It's like a USB-C, so I don't know if you're able to connect. No. You know, to keep looking.
Yeah, no, that's not. Yeah, no, they're not there because we can't get access.
We'll be with you in a minute. But it's important, but, yeah, but, well, no, I want them to listen as well, so we'll come to you as soon.
Oh, yeah, well, I could do that, but it's getting it to,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
just getting it onto this.
So Joe, the first one was the thing had shown a flat roof and it's a pitch roof.
Yes.
So that's the first thing.
When-
This one is about what? Something we've shown is incorrect, or,
Yeah, so on the presentation, the old design was shown.
right?
The elevations were correct at the end, but the visuals, so the 3D sort of CGI images of the old scheme, so there was the landscaping schemes were increased a lot, but also the whole design, the materiality and the roof form of the building have changed quite different. That's the correct one, but there was one from Park Road where you'd shown the flat roof.
us a minute, we'll put them up on the screen.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
the correct one.
that's it. Thanks. Yeah, good.
Right. So, Joe, you've got 5 minutes, and we warn you with 1 minute to go. And, sorry? Yeah, and then please give your name for the record. Carry on.
Yeah, sorry.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Jo Kemp from L&T Care Developments, and I'm the agent for this application, which proposes the redevelopment of this vacant brownfield site in a sustainable location in order to meet an identified housing need by providing a 66-bed care home for local older people. L&T is the UK's leading care home developer, having built and operated over 260 care homes nationwide. As well as building care homes, we also operate them through our sister company, so if members choose to approve the scheme today, we would be on site very soon to begin construction of this much needed care facility, and we'd be here to stay, becoming a valued part of the community once the home is open, forging links with schools and community groups, and hosting events and activities. There were no objections to the application from statutory consultees, including Highways, and the Senior Heritage and Design Officer removed their objection upon receipt of our revised plans. Although the Council's Environmental Quality team have no objection to the proposal, we understand that neighbouring residents have concerns over the construction phase, and were the application to be approved, we have agreed to a condition restricting piling to non-percussive methods. I hope it also puts minds at ease to know that we have offered to have the nearby properties independently surveyed prior to any work starting, with a view to carrying out any remediation works at our cost, although of course we would do everything possible to avoid these being required. In relation to residential amenity, the proposed home is positioned so that any habitable room windows directly facing properties on water gardens are 41 and 43 metres away, which far exceeds any separation distance guidance. The windows closest to 3 Piper's Gardens, are corridor windows, so not habitable rooms, and these are 32 metres away. We would be happy to obscure glaze these via condition if this is required. Number 4 Piper's Gardens does not directly face the care home, and the nearest habitable room window of the home would be 26 metres from the corner of this house, with landscaping along the boundary to provide screening. If the site were to be developed as another industrial use or residential dwellings, it's likely that the impact on neighbouring properties would be much more severe than the proposed home, in visual terms, as well as overlooking, noise and traffic impacts. A row of dwellings may only have 10-metre long rear gardens, for example, so any houses would be over 30 metres closer to the existing dwellings than the proposed care home. Adult social care were not consulted on our application. However, a recent telephone call with Norfolk County Council confirmed they are in favour of the application, and our submitted needs assessment, which was carried out by a specialist consultant, indicates a need for 156 ensuite care beds in the Market catchment area and 717 in South Norfolk. With regard to car parking, the care home would benefit from 27 parking spaces, and as many of our operational homes of this size have 25 spaces, we are confident this will be more than enough in this sustainable location. There will be up to 24 members of staff on site at the busiest part of the day, and shifts are staggered to avoid busy changeovers. Staff generally come from within the local area, and residents will either come from or have family within the locality, which means that visitors and staff are able to travel sustainably to the home. Visiting hours are also unrestricted, and most visitors tend to arrive in the evenings when there is less staff on shift, therefore more parking spaces available. In order to help combat climate change and reduce running costs, over 70% of the home's energy will come from on-site renewables, including a battery to store surplus energy for future use. The development would also generate significant employment, with 50 to 60 jobs being created for local candidates. It would provide a multi-million pound investment into the local economy. I just wanted to touch briefly on the landscaping. I know I mentioned that's been updated. The Broadlands Lodge scheme around the corner was, as the chair rightly suggested, is a completely different different scheme, and no screening was actually required. There's no neighbouring residents, hence it's very different. And finally, we really do know the value that a great care home brings to a community, and we would really welcome the opportunity to provide a home and a greater quality of life for 66 local residents in need of care. Thank you.
Thank you. Good timing, Joan. Members, any questions? Yes. Ian.
With regards to overlooking the neighbours, I'm just trying to clarify the landscaping shadowing, and it was the last thing you mentioned. Obviously, I understand fully about shadowing, and I got the impression that this was being referred to the building. Obviously, trees are being planted as a screening, so one which would help benefit the neighbours that are concerned, but if they were too close to the boundary, obviously they are going to create, it's a simple perspective, they would create far more shadowing of the gardens than the actual building that is positioned how many metres away from the residents' gardens?
Between 30 and
40. Yeah, so if the trees were planted, the boundary trees were planted, which are very good environmentally, but the height of those would completely, with the position of the sun, would completely overshadow the situation, because they would create far more. So could proper planting protocols be put into place that would limit the height of the foliage, which would actually act as a double whammy, as it were, because it would protect the privacy of the residents, but it would also cater for BNG, for all the environmental issues, and not be detrimental to your residents. So that would be one issue that I would, from purely a visual and in protective point of view, that would be something that I feel should be approached and dealt with for the benefit of all.
Ian, can I just say that at the moment this is for refusal, so there are no conditions. No, okay. So we can't, at this moment.
It was just an observation.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine for an observation, but we can't put any conditions on. Any more questions of Joe? No? Joe, thank you, and thank you for helping us earlier. And we come to Councillor Graham Minsell. And you know all the rules, so I don't have to repeat them. So pull the microphone towards you, Graham, because it is a thing. Okay, off you go.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me start by saying that, contrary to media reports, our town are not against elderly people, and we welcome this kind of development in the town. And to be fair to the applicant, we've been in discussions for probably the last 2 to 3 years with regards to this site. One of the first things that I pointed out was that the building was too high, and that there was going to be problems there. Unfortunately, I was informed that their business model did not allow it to be any smaller, which was a shame. There's several reasons why I and the residents of the town have issues with this. First of all, is its design. It's virtually identical to the one around the corner, which is perfectly fine for there, but for this particular site is not, I don't consider suitable. All of the buildings around, the maximum is 2.5 stories, so you kind of have a look at that and think that doesn't meet with the neighbourhood plan and the policies around that. It also takes no regard to our own design code. We've published that and we've asked people to consider that. There is no consideration in that on that. The main problem is the size and the massing of the building. And one thing I did notice was the photograph, the images that were produced with regards to the light report. Is it number 5? Photograph number 5. You can just bring that up.
Sorry, we have to
The
switch.
one of the building, the green building. I was a bit bemused to see that the actual drawing sitting on the plan actually sits on the road off to the side. It doesn't actually sit where the building is. So I'm not sure whether the figures on that, whether that's just an error in the drawing or whether that's a question of building it. Not that one. The what 3? Yeah, that's the one. The 3D one. You see there. You can see the road coming in, and you can actually see that the building's sitting on the road rather than actually sitting. And I don't know how that's worked out, but whether or not that's just an image error or whether that's a question about it. But it does demonstrate the actual size of this building. I would also question the need for this. Back in 2021, this committee approved a care home down on the Nelson Road site. And speaking to the land agent for that, he tells me that they have not managed to achieve the numbers required to actually build out that site, hence why it's still sitting vacant today and they haven't actually built it. So is there a need for something like this? You've also got the Churchill site, which is just alongside it, built 4 years ago. That's still standing nearly half empty. So you're kind of looking at that and think, okay. I would question the traffic and the parking issue. 27 spaces, and as the applicant has pointed out, 24 people on site at any one time. If you say half of those, it's still 12. You've then got care staff coming in and visitors to the site. I would look and kind of go, I think you need a few more parking spaces. That is going to result in people parking on the access road and down on the pavement alongside the road, blocking the traffic from Aldi store. We already know that the Aldi site...
1 minute to go.
Sorry, yep. We already know the Aldi site is causing traffic problems on Park Road. Yeah, it's on the whole, I think, had it been reduced in height to 2 stories and had some amendments, it probably would have been okay for this site. But it is just literally too big and too obtrusive. You know, you've got the overlooking into people's gardens, into their houses. You've got the issues with their overlooking into the site. I wouldn't want to live in one of those houses, and I think that people trying to sell their houses will have a difficult time. On the whole, reduce the height and do some work on it, and it would have been a presentable site. But the size, massing, etc., just will not work on this particular site. And I'd like to see the applicant come back with something more reasonable that actually takes into consideration our design
If
code.
you come to conclusion, Graham.
Plan. Thank you, Chair.
Are there any questions of Graham? John?
Graham, how many care homes have you got in the distance surrounding area at the moment?
So there's between 12 and 14, depending on what you consider to be a care home, because some of them are small care homes with only maybe half a dozen places. But yeah, there's about 14 altogether, offering a mixture of care between dementia care and just elderly housing. Thank you, Chair.
So, we finished with that. We're going back to members. We're out of public speaking. So, members, any thoughts? One of the things that gets to me is, yes, adult services in county will say there is a need, and there is a need, but not at all costs. So, any thoughts and comments from members? David?
Thank you, Chairman. I think presentation by Councillor Minshaw was very uplifting, and I do have to agree that this overlooking of the properties that are there already is probably one of the major problems. I think the building itself is good. I think the style of it is in the right place. It's good. I think the facility. Just one question: is there a dining area there? I know there's a tea room. Is there a dining? Yeah, good.
Yes, there are dining areas.
I like my food. So for me, the concern really is this overlooking of the surrounding properties, and it's the right thing in the wrong place, put bluntly, quite honestly. It's not for us to determine whether you should or shouldn't have another care home. That's a business proposition, and it's up to the business people to say, yes, we can do this, and I'm sure they've looked at the figures and come up with a reason why they can do it. But unfortunately, as far as I'm concerned, and I just repeated, it's the right property, but in the wrong place. Thank you.
Any more, Gary?
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just have verification from the officer, if that's okay, on something, please?
Sorry?
Can I just have verification from the officer on something, please? Obviously, one of the objections is the overlooking. Now, obviously, there's, I'm guessing, a minimum distance for overlooking, because as we know, we all get housing estates, and my own house, I can kind of see into my neighbour's front room and other bits and pieces. Obviously, the applicant has said that this property will be 30, 40 metres from their property, and most of the windows that will be overlooking are corridors rather than houses. Rather than bedrooms or living areas. How does that then affect the overlooking part of the objection if nothing is actually overlooking it unless you're walking down a corridor?
So the side facing or looking towards the west are all faced with habitable rooms. So the corridors actually go down the centre of the building. So in terms of overlooking, you always have the conventional guideline distance for like 21 metres between two-storey conventional residential properties where you have a rear main living room to another person's rear main living room and bedrooms above. And obviously, this is a different situation in that, yes, we've obviously got 30 to 40 metres, but it's a very different proposition. Obviously, you're meant to increase your distance for spacing when you go up in storey height, but I think this is not really a conventional situation. This is not a large residential property. This is a number of habitable bedrooms. So there's a number of occupants in those rooms, which we think will be there for large parts of the day. So over 3 stories, there's not a sort of conventional guideline distance, but for all intents and purposes, even at 30 to 40 metres, we think there's still a lot of potential for overlooking by the fact that they're all habitable rooms. It's not as if like a conventional family house, you might move between rooms. People will rely on those rooms. And you've only got to look at things like COVID, where you could have a situation where people are room bound. So, I think it is a concern. And I don't dispute there is quite a marked difference in terms of, from a conventional 21 metre 2-storey property, but this is not a conventional situation.
Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm looking at it from a bit different viewpoint. You're looking this way, overlooking. What I'm looking at, what I've heard, is from the houses, we're looking at this huge thing in front of us. Is that?
Yeah,
have I got that right?
To be fair, the main concern was more about the scale and the mass and the feeling of over-dominance, overbearing. I think you get a real sense of that in the gardens of those residents, that it will be a very dominant feature in their properties.
Yeah, I think just to clarify that, around that point, I think, Richard makes a valid point. I think it's around the fact that it's quite visually intrusive, so it's a design point as well as one of residential amenity in its own right. So there's the fact that it's quite a large, bulky building. So I think we almost need to consider that in terms of what the recommendation is in the report.
So any more comments?
I don't have any issues supporting care homes. And I was in Diss about 3 or 4 weeks ago on the car park of the Aldi supermarket, and that alone is quite a substantial building. But when you look at this care home, that's going to be possibly 2 or 3 times taller than the Aldi building. it sort of puts it in perspective that the massing is huge. I mean, basically, I have no issues with care homes, but I think the design is wrong in this place.
Thank you. So no more. So we're going to go to the recommendations. And a phrase we've just learned that I'm going to come to. The recommendations refuse following completion and final evaluation oversight of the further riparian animal survey, a phrase I'm going to use over and over. So members, all those in favour of the recommendation, please raise your hand.
And so just to clarify, that second refusal reason is removed, so it's just the one
Yeah,
refusal
yes.
reason. Yep, and that looks to, hang on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for refusal. Oh, you both, so it's unanimously refusal then.
Right, so it's unanimous?
Unanimous for refusal, Chair.
Right, thank you. So, number 2, we're going to go on to number 2. Thank you. I haven't seen it. He did. Anna, can you pull that microphone a bit towards you, please?
Sorry about that, Chair. I didn't hear down here.
Yeah, it's a long way, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, Hannah, off you go and lead us through.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, members. So the application before us is seeking planning permission for the erection of 3 bungalows and garages on land north of Common Road in Dickleborough. The officer recommendation for this is a refusal. The site comprises a vacant plot between Southview, which is an existing dwelling here, and Willow Farm, which is situated here. You can see the layout of the land sort of surrounded in red here. This is currently an access track to the fields behind. Agricultural access would remain as part of this application, with access taken separately onto the site. While the application site is positioned within a small group of existing dwellings and some farm-related buildings, it is outside the defined settlement boundary of Dickleborough, and therefore, in planning terms, it is considered part of the countryside, although it is not considered to be an isolated dwelling due to sort of its positioning. Our key issues in front of us today regard the principal development, sustainable access to services and facilities, impact of the scheme on rural character and landscape, and the loss of a highly distinctive hedgerow in order to facilitate the access.
Yeah.
So the site in front of us, you can see sort of the site in context to Dickleborough. So we've got the site down here on this sort of parcel surrounded. You can see this sort of cluster of dwellings that does exist along Common Road, and sort of these setback kind of settings. This site sort of formulates that transitionary period element between sort of these forward-facing dwellings, the site, and then this sort of setback kind of moving into rurality. As you can see, this site does sort of form an important kind of permeable kind of bit within the landscape, and is fairly sort of viewed separate to the built-up form of Dickleborough to the north here. We can also see accesses off of the A140 with sort of this as a larger sort of settlement with some more facilities further along to the southwest. Dickleborough does have some facilities, but it's considered sort of a service village in terms of the hierarchy of allowing new development.
This scene sort of shows the development boundary and the context within the site. Now, it's important to say that the policies in our development plan basically direct housing growth towards sustainable settlements, generally within the development boundaries, generally in locations with good access to jobs, facilities and services. What we have in front of us is a scheme sort of looking in line with DM 1.3, which restricts development in the countryside unless it is supported by a specific policy, or where there are overriding economic, social and environmental benefits. As stated, there is no policy that applies for the principal development in this case, so therefore we need to be looking at those three principles in terms of the benefits. It's really important to say that we do have a neighbourhood plan as well in place. DR3 of that is really important, which sort of seeks for new development to respond to a settlement pattern of the parish. But officers do consider the proposal basically would have a further extension of a small, would be a further extension into kind of a rural location, and the principle generally would not be acceptable. But you can see the context of the site here. This slide gives us the proposed site plan. As you can see, access is taken from Common Road, and actually, while we sort of have some setback and a further setback, it does generally sort of follow some flow within the street scene. It does comprise 3 detached bungalows arranged around the private access roads. The individual dwellings are considered to be acceptable in terms of appearance and scale. Some concerns were raised by the parish council with regards to compliance with one of the policies, neighbourhood policy DR5, saying that generally, given we are in the countryside location, each plot should be larger and get larger as it progresses further away from the boundary. That's very much to be in keeping with that rurality kind of nature of that countryside outside the built-up setting. I will say there have been no significant concerns with regards to neighbour amenity, amenity of future users, heritage assets, or highway safety in these terms. You can sort of see on this slide the design. As said, they are single-storey bungalow. There's a range of different housing types across the site. Generally, the detailed design, scale and materials are considered acceptable. The proposed dwellings also are to meet accessibility requirements and also the space standards. So generally, the designs can be acceptable. And the variation given across that cluster that it comes with, each dwelling already along Common Road is of variable design. So generally that variability is kind of considered acceptable, though it doesn't follow that increase in pattern. A key concern for the application, as mentioned, is the sustainability of the site. The site is located roughly about under 700 metres from the settlement boundary, and in order to access kind of the facilities within Dickleborough, which as raised is a service village, it does have some facilities such as a primary school, some shops, but generally for sort of larger scale services we would probably see future users potentially moving into this as well as Dickleborough. In order to access Dickleborough itself, where you would be able to catch, to get public transport and some of those sort of small scale services, you would need to walk along Common Road, which does not have a pavement and is unlit. You can sort of see the access along here. So you'd be walking along the road here without any pavement or lighting. You would then need to cross Ipswich Road, which you can see here, where there is a pavement along the side, but it is predominantly unlit. While it's not materially sort of far in terms of distance, generally we would see more likely than not a reliance on private car in order to access Dickleborough, as well as service facilities and essential needs in this, as Dickleborough wouldn't be able to meet all of those requirements for future users. As such, it's kind of considered that it would have a reliance on a private vehicle. There would be limited sort of provision towards sustainable transport. Just to give some more context in terms of that road as well, we're looking sort of the sites on the side here, we're looking down the road here, and then we're looking east. Again, the sites you can just sort of see to the side here, just to demonstrate sort of that access. This side actually shows you the site, which is great. So we're standing at the field access here. So this field access will maintain. The access to the site itself will have a separate access to this field access. As you can see, it is an undeveloped patch of land. You can see the existing dwelling across the site there. This is some further images of the site. This is the hedgerow that runs across the front. As stated, this hedgerow is has been in existence for at least 27 years due to the public images available to me. It is a mature hedgerow. It does very much build into this idea on that context of rurality. As stated, the surrounding area of Dickerborough, by its very nature, is within the Waverley tributary farmland landscape character area, which is characterised by dispersed development, a some sense of rurality. And what's quite material in this case is, although that you can see properties on either side, it does create quite a permeable gap. And we're standing sort of looking across that site, which very much gives into this idea of rurality. That hedgerow does form part of that kind of character image, as you can see. Coming onto that hedgerow, you can see the section of hedgerow here, which is where the proposed access is. So the access would be sort of roughly from this side of the tree all the way to the other side of the tree. You can sort of see in the image. So access would be going in that location. All of that's about 25 metres of hedgerow that would be removed, as well as one of the trees on the site. As stated, that hedgerow is of very high distinctiveness. It is a species-rich hedgerow which would be lost as part of this. Replacement planting is proposed as part of the scheme, and in terms of length of hedgerow that would be provided by that replacement, that would exceed the amount being lost. There is a full landscaping scheme, and biodiversity net gain can be achieved through both on-site and also off-site purchase of credits. So in terms of biodiversity net gain, that can be achieved on the site. However, the hedgerow itself has intrinsic value. It is a mature hedgerow. It builds into that idea of rurality. It has value within itself, both separate and linked to those biodiversity. As such, in line with kind of our hedgerow policy, and as well as Dickerborough neighbourhood plan policies which restrict the loss of the hedgerow, that has been put down as a reason for refusal. I think it's really important to specify within this that there is a precise policy in the Dickerborough neighbourhood plan that basically states that if it's within an 1884 map, the hedgerow has extra protection. This hedgerow is not contained within that map. It is also not considered important under the hedgerow regulations. However, as stated, due to the age and the value within this right, it still is considered of value. Okay, so I just wanted to provide this slide just sort of shows you that sort of layout, coming back to those key issues. Something I've not mentioned so far, which is, I think, really, really important to raise, is currently we do not have a 5-year housing supply. So as such, paragraph 11D of the National Planning Policy Framework is engaged, and the tilted balance does apply. There are benefits associated with this scheme. It is small scale. It would provide the delivery of 3 additional dwellings, 3 single-storey dwellings. It would have limited economic benefits through the construction activity and future household expenditure. There would be EV charging provided as part of it, but ultimately it is not considered those benefits. It is considered that the harm caused by the scheme by nature of the conflict of the spatial strategy, the unsustainable location, reliance on private vehicles, the harm to the rural character and landscape, and the loss of that hedgerow outweigh the benefits caused by the scheme, and as such, on that tilted balance, those benefits are outweighed by those. So as such, it's not considered to kind of complete the balance. I think that's everything. So yes, in summary, 4 reasons for refusal. Any questions?
We will in a minute. Just something I'm not quite sure of. Did you say there's going to be a replacement hedgerow?
Yes, so there is
Do we have to take down the whole 25 metres? It's a double question, if you like. Do we have to take the 25 metres, and where will the replacement hedgerow be?
Absolutely. So the 25 metres does need to be taken out in order to have safe access onto the site. It's to facilitate the visibility displays. So yes, it would need to be that extent. The replacement hedgerow is going around the rear and side. Not at the front. I think it's a mix of medium distinctively. It doesn't quite meet the very high threshold, but there is a mix of kind of quality hedgerow going in. And that would, I can't remember the exact number, but it is at least, I think, double the amount that would be taken out. So there is landscaping proposed.
Thank you. Members, questions? Questions only. Okay, sir.
So just picking up on what Vic said, for that hedgerow, was that a highways stipulation that had to come out? Okay. So you made a lot on the highways. Would on the hedgeways, would that hedgerow point be enough to refuse this by itself? And does it mean that on that basis there can never be any development on this land because of the hedgerow? And then will that apply to other times we come across hedgerows, and at what age would a hedgerow need to be, at which point we say, well, you just can't develop on that land?
That's very fair. So the reason that that reason for refusal was put in is because inherently we want to protect the loss of hedgerow, and as part of the consideration of putting that in, our policy basically states that if there were overriding benefits of the scheme and it could also be mitigated against, it would be more acceptable. What the summary that I've presented is that there is not benefits of the scheme that outweigh that loss, so it would stand on its own. But using that kind of deal of future applications or weighing up within your own deliberations, if you felt the benefits of the scheme did overweigh that, then no, it would not stand on its own. If you did not feel it would, that would be part of kind of the decision-making balance you would make. Does that answer that question?
You got that?
Yeah.
It's sort of sat within, there's harm, is the policy allows for overriding benefits of the scheme to counter that harm. In this case, the way up is that those benefits haven't undone the harm of that loss of that hedgerow within its own right. But you might draw a different conclusion.
Okay, so the hedgerow itself is not the final block. It's a judgmental thing on whether they are overriding other measures which would compensate for it.
Correct.
That's right. You have to consider all those points together in the round as part of the tilted balance.
So,
sorry, Chair, I missed that last point. Can we have that? Yeah, no, just to clarify, I was saying in terms of the hedgerow loss, you have to consider all of those points and reasons for refusal together in the context of paragraph 11D of the MPPF, i.e. the tilted balance. So that plays into that in terms of what Hannah was explaining.
Just a silly question popped into my head. This mature hedgerow is on the roadside, the front of the thing. That will disappear and some hedgerow will be at the back, facing the fields. In a balance, we're losing something that's a boundary and viewable from the road and replacing it with something at the back. Is that part of it? I'm trying to get my head around that.
No, it's an important question. So I think there's multiple considerations here. I think firstly there is the consideration of the quality of the hedgerow that exists at the front within its own right. You know, it is at least 29 years old. It has benefits. It has quality. It adds to rurality. There is then that question of, you know, and it is classed as very high distinctiveness. Is then a question of you are providing replacement and you are increasing the amount of hedgerow, but the quality wouldn't quite reach the very high level, but it would be of a medium to high quality depending on the provision. It would screen the side of the site, and then you might also want to consider it in terms of the second reason refusal, sorry, the third reason refusal around the rural character and landscape as well. So there's a lot of different elements going on. There is also then the consideration of biodiversity net gain, which is separate to it, the provision of the landscaping scheme, as well as the hedgerow quality within its own rights, which would exist at the front. You know, once that's removed, it would no longer cease to exist.
Thank you. Members, any more questions? No? So we're going to go into public speaking, and we've got Pam. Hello, Pam. So you've been watching carefully, so you know the routine. You've got 5 minutes.
Okay.
We'll warn you with 1 minute to go, and when you turn on the microphone, please give your name for the record. So when you're ready. Yep, on.
Hi, I'm Pam Reekie, Parish Councillor for Dickleborough and Rushall. Our main concern, well, we've got many concerns, but this proposal doesn't address anything in our neighbourhood plan, and we wonder why we've spent so long producing this when it's going to be ignored. The site is outside the settlement of Dickleborough and is in a rural location. It's historically sparsely populated, and actually building 3 bungalows on this quite small site, it might look quite big here, but it's not a very big site, would really urbanise this common road, which has been known as a very rural lane on the edge of Dickleborough. As they said before, there's no pavement there, and walking is quite, you know, it's not that easy. And we know that people will start using their cars, and 3 houses, you're going to have at least probably 6 cars there, so it's bringing more cars into the village, more pollution. It's because it's in the rural situation. 3 houses seen as significant development for Dickleborough, and we really don't want to see this happening in our rural area. It should actually address the heritage of that street. We've also got concerns about the space around the houses. As a site on the edge of Dickleborough, the neighbourhood plan says that gardens should be bigger for each building as they move out of the village. As you can see here, the actual gardens get smaller and it's a concentrated area. Also, a lot has been said about the hedgerow. The biodiversity is a net gain. It doesn't add anything to our village. This is it's an established hedgerow. We all know how when you've got an established hedgerow, the amount of biodiversity that lives and uses that is significant. It's shelter, it's food, and it's part of a green corridor that links migration of animals and that can live in that area. They say they're going to put new hedgerows in, but we all know how long they take to establish. And also, in the climate change we're in at the moment, I don't know if you've seen, I mean, it was interesting to see the development with all the trees. I mean, trees are really struggling to get established in our climate at the moment. So this new hedgerow, there's no actual guarantee that that is going to establish itself and build and have the biodiversity that the hedgerow that's there has at the moment. There's also no real evidence of harvesting water to recycle water on the site. And although there's car charging electric points put in, there's no evidence of solar or any other carbon reduction measures. On a new development, you'd expect to see something like that, and that's not there. So really, coming to conclusion, the parish council believes that the proposal, which is situated outside the development, does not address the numerous policies within the National Planning Policy Framework. The Waveney Tributary Farmland Landscape Character Area, aspects of the Greater Norwich Local Plan, and definitely it doesn't address policies in Dickleborough and Rushall Neighbourhood Plan.
Thank you. If you just stay there a second, you might get questions. Are there any questions? No? So you've got off lightly. Thank you for your comments. I've got Delmy down to speak. Ellie, can you do me a favour? I think so. If you'd like to come to the public speaking, Delmy, please. So you know the rules very well. 5 minutes. We'll warn you with 1 minute to go, and then as you start to speak, please give your name for the record.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Delmy Thompson, the applicant for this scheme of 3 accessible bungalows in an existing cluster on the edge of Dickleborough. The scheme has been designed to support people at different stages of life, maximum care for the environment, and in compliance with the majority of neighbourhood plan policies. The officer has tested the scheme and found it acceptable against 9 key planning areas: heritage, amenity, highways, drainage, BNG, ecology, carbon, nutrient neutrality, GIRAMs, all compliant, as well as the design of the actual homes themselves. No agency consultee objects, and the only comment from the public is a letter of support. So the viability of the scheme rests on a well-trodden walk into the village and 25 metres of hedging. Slide 2 shows the landscaping details. Now let us be clear, this scheme more than doubles the hedging on site. Not the hedging that's been removed, the total hedging on site more than doubles. We're removing 25 metres purely for highway safety, planting 91 metres, so 52 becomes 118 metres of hedging. The officer confirms at 565 that the hedging being removed is not a heritage hedge, so nothing historic is lost. In addition, the scheme has full B&G credits, bird and bat boxes, water harvesting, a landscaping condition offered for garden sizes, and a newt licence despite no trace of newts on site whatsoever. We've taken great care to minimise environmental impact here. On the neighbourhood plan, slide 3 shows the layout of one of the bungalows. The neighbourhood plan actively calls for, and I quote, homes for the elderly such as bungalows, and it says the parish council would welcome housing suitable for older people, including bungalows. We're proposing 3 accessible and adaptable bungalows specifically designed to support different stages of life. There are 16 policies in the neighbourhood plan. The officer finds no conflict with 10. The remaining address rural character, rurality, and the walk into the village. So on rurality, slide 4 shows the before and after view from the village before the new planting has grown. You can barely tell the difference. Roof heights, scale, and hedging are deliberately aligned to continue the existing view. The officer confirms at 1.2 that this is a vacant plot between homes and we are filling a gap to complete the building line. She also confirms at 536 that this is not a protected view or designated vista, and at 548 that we're providing an acceptable standard of amenity. Members, filling a gap with well-spaced, acceptable homes isn't strategic development, nor is it urbanising the countryside. On location, slide 5 shows the site in relation to its neighbouring properties and the simplicity of access to the village. We recognise it sits outside the current boundary, but as the officer confirms at 5.3, these are not isolated homes in the countryside. And as she states at 510, the distance is not materially far. Those are her words, not materially far. The MPPF reminds us that sustainable transport will vary between urban and rural areas and that this must be taken into account. Next slide, please. In reality, these homes are 3 minutes from a school bus pickup point, roughly 12 minutes walk from a shop, church, pub, chip shop, village hall, meeting rooms, history centre, playground, primary school and regular bus services to Diss, Norwich and Ipswich. Neighbours approaching 80 and a family with primary aged children make that walk comfortably on a daily basis. Next slide, please. In conclusion, South Norfolk Council do not have a 5-year land supply. Dickleborough must deliver 25 homes under GNLP. The neighbourhood plan calls for flexible bungalows such as these, but offers no actual plan to deliver them. We're proposing 3 well-designed accessible homes in a scheme that takes great care for the environment, aligns with the majority of neighbourhood plan policies, the officer themselves find compliant across 9 areas and agree are not materially far from services. On weighing all the evidence, members, it cannot be claimed that harms significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. So I ask you to apply the tilted balance appropriately and grant permission subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, good timing. Members, any questions? Gary?
Thank you, Chairman. There's always a kind of debate on accessible housing, on what that actually means. To me, accessible housing means that it's suitable for someone in a wheelchair. I just want to ask, is that kind of what your plan is, or is it more that it's just accessible for members of and the elderly community?
So if on the slide that shows the bungalow layout, when we had them designed, they're specifically designed, I think there's a phrase there, M4 part 2, whatever it is, that is designed to ensure that the doorways, there's enough turning space within each room, and the doorways are designed with enough space for wheelchair users.
Any more questions? No? Yeah. Ian?
Have you taken into consideration anything in the planning with regards to solar panels? I know you've got electric chargers there, or any other sustainable heating, cooling, possibly.
There's no details on solar planning at this stage. Certainly something that could be open for discussion.
But you're doing the 10% requirement for green energy.
The carbon criteria has been met.
Which is a standard thing. Thank you. No more questions? Oh,
yes.
Trevor.
Wait, you did say there was rainwater harvesting and recycling. That is in.
Yeah, rainwater has been included, yeah.
No more. Thank you, Delmy. If you'd like to. And now we have the District Councillor, Clayton Hudson. Clayton? So you know the rules again. 5 minutes, we'll warn you with 1 minute to go, and when you press the start speaking, please give your name for the record.
Good morning, members. Chair. My name is Clayton Hudson. I'm one of the local members for Beckvale, Dickleborough and Skull. As you probably noticed from the the officer's report, which I commend, under para 4.2, I submitted no comments. I was pretty confident that this recommendation from the officer would be for refusal and there would be no need to come from that committee. And I just want to put it on public record because the applicant is a member of this council. That's the reason it's before you today. First of all, I want to put on record that I fully support the officer recommendation for refusal. Likewise, I 100% stand behind the parish council's comments, both in the committee report and the points were raised by Pam this morning before you. Given this council has adopted Dickleborough and Newshall's neighbourhood plan this year, back in May, I am disappointed that the proposal in front of you doesn't demonstrate clearly or respond to the relevant policies from that neighbourhood plan. The material reasons I'm objecting is the proposal is clearly outside of the neighbourhood plan, the settlement boundary. You'll probably see a couple of drone shots. I took them on Monday of basically the site. And you can, I think slide 2 might be helpful. You can basically see the southern end of the settlement boundary. You can see Dickleborough Church. And over to the right, you can see the most recent development in the last 10 years that was basically approved and was contentious at the time because there's actually a white line on the road, basically to allow those people to walk back into the, but there isn't a footpath, but they've put a white line on the road to allow the people to walk back into the settlement. So you can see where this site is in relation to the defined settlement boundary of the village. It's in a very rural location. If you go back to slide 1, please, you'll see that basically the centre of the village, as the crow flies, is 530 metres, and if you're to walk it, it's 1.15 kilometres, and 350 metres of that is along an unlit, very rural road. Anybody who's going to basically purchase and live on these properties, should it be approved, is basically going to be using a car. They're not going to be, if they're going to the school, if anybody's going to go to the school from here, children aren't going to be walking from here to the school, nor are their parents. They're going to be taking the car. So it's really not a sustainable location. As I said, the footpath is 350 metres away. The nearest bus stop is 800 metres away. And the proposal in front of you fails to promote sustainable transport and is not, in my opinion, a suitable location for residential development. I'd also like to point out that basically I think it's a little, if you look at the context, and maybe slide 2 helps with this, I just think the site is slightly overdeveloped too. Basically, I still think it's not a sustainable location, but basically actually in context, potentially if there was one, then we might be having a slightly different discussion with regard to being overdeveloped. But I actually think in the context of where it is, I think it's overdeveloped. Although I have some concerns with regard to the hedgerow, and I obviously wouldn't want it to be lost, I wouldn't want you to put a huge amount of weight on that. I think that basically the significant weight is basically with regard to whether this is a sustainable location and outside of the settlement boundary. I think the hedgerow and basically there being replacement hedgerow might be a red herring. So with regard to concluding this, I 100% support the recommendation refusal. With regard to paras 5.89 and 5.95, i.e. it's outside of the settlement boundary, it's isolated, not sustainable, it has poor connectivity, it heavily relies on cars. Yes, there is the loss of the hedgerow, and although this council can't demonstrate a 5-year housing supply, this location is completely inaccessible. And if it was approved, we might as well just go and pave over the whole of the countryside. So basically, thank you for your considerations this morning, and I hope you basically will agree with the officer recommendation.
Thank you. Just one thing going to the beginning. If it's a member as an applicant, the Constitution says it has to come to us, just to be thing. Any questions at Clayton? John?
The buildings next to it, I assume that they were outside the development area, were they?
I think most of these predate, a lot of these buildings predate 1974 before this council. Yeah, basically, but back in the 70s, there were much different rules and policies.
Did they change then the boundary of the village from where the development was, and they pushed it in, did they?
Well, they would have put in a boundary
But why wasn't the boundary put on the other side of that development?
because they didn't think it was relevant. That is,
Okay.
because you'd have a lot of countryside in there in the development boundary, I guess. I don't know. But that's a, you know, that's a not a material reason.
Well, it makes a difference, doesn't it, on your decision, because there's a development on the other side.
Yeah, but
They're
we can't argue about when the development was
What they're
built and
saying,
why
the
it was built.
applicants is outside the development area.
Yeah, I think the key points to remember is in the countryside, it's outside of the settlement boundary for the purposes
Under our
of
current
decision making.
rules.
Yeah. Right, okay.
So we're out of public speaking, so we're going to go to members for thought. So lots of things in play here. So it'd be interested to see what members are thinking. Gary, you're going to start?
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just check one off about something that was just raised? Obviously, one of the policies that we're working on is obviously that Dickerborough and Russell have a neighbourhood plan, and obviously that was all done. Obviously, the application was submitted back in January, February time, I think it was March actually, and obviously the neighbourhood plan was actually agreed in May. So how much weight do we have to put that? It seems the application was submitted before that plan was even agreed.
No, that's an important question. The adopted neighbourhood plan forms part of the adopted local plan. That is given primacy in decision making, and it forms part of the local plan. When we make decisions, we based it on the policies at the time of the decision making, not at the time that something was submitted. This is similar to, for example, the draft, the NPPF. As soon as the new one comes in, the decisions at that time takes the most recent version. But the neighbourhood plan forms part of the local plan and the development plan for this decision, and is important to consider in its full.
David, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just a quick one. I'm very much in two minds. That for me, the selling point of this is the fact that it's 3 bungalows in a rural area. Bungalows are very much sought after by a certain group of individuals, as we all know. And it seems as if we could be losing those 3 based on the fact that it's so many metres away from a boundary.
But your policy,
I know.
your local policy, your
Yes.
members' policy is quite clear. This is not adjacent to, which would count. This is outside, it's clearly outside the boundary. What we have to say is, are there any circumstances mitigating that we could, where people could get there?
Well, another comments have been made by the applicant that it's so many, 1.6 miles is what?
No, I think that was the district council
who
who mentioned
okay.
distances. Are there any other? No. So we're going to go to the recommendation members. Sorry, let me get to the page. So it's for refusal. So all those in favour of the recommendation, please raise your hand.
That's 1, 2, 3, 4, Chair, for
Four.
refusal.
All those against? Abstain? Oh, sorry,
So
against.
I've got 3 against, Chair, and then
Can we do the against again? Against.
so I've got 2 against.
What, against the...
Against
refusal.
Against refusal. So I've got 3 against refusal, then Chair.
Any
and then-
abstentions?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, sorry, 4. So that's 4, Chair. So it's your casting vote.
Yeah, I'll stick with my casting vote.
So just to clarify, that is for refusal then with your casting vote. So that'll be 5-4 with the chairman's casting vote to refuse.
Right, thank you. Let's go to number, sorry, I'm looking at the time. Yeah, we'll go to number 3. Well, don't question it. No questions. You've got to go now. Well, we might get over this one. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Just before I start, members' attention is drawn to the update sheet, which included an email from Councillor Evans, which has been circulated to committee members as well. That was yesterday. So moving on to the application. This application is for full planning permission for the demolition of the existing agricultural building on the site, including alterations to access and landscaping. This is for one self-build dwelling. The site is located in Church Lane, Wheataker. So moving on to the location, as you can see here by the arrow, that's where the site is. It's located in a relatively sporadic development within the countryside. Here you can see the development boundary of Borough St Peter, which does include part of Wheataker as well. As I said, it would be considered to be in a countryside location. Moving in further to the proposal, so in the zoomed in aerial plan, here we can see the barn which is proposed to be demolished. Also we can see here the applicant's current residential premises, which is the gardens, and the associated outbuildings with that. That's this T-shaped building here. Obviously these were within the blue line of the application, and these are agricultural and storage units, sorry, stabling, not agricultural units. Now moving on to the site plan as proposed. Here you can see that the proposal includes parking, landscaping and access as well. To meet the access requirements, a hedgerow is proposed to be removed to provide the required visibility. Here, moving towards the proposal itself, here you can see a two-storey dwelling with a large glazed element to the front elevation. Also, there's a single-storey elevation which includes carport and garaging as well. The design of the proposal, as you can see here, includes extensive glazing, cladding, brick plinth detailing, and also it would be pan-tile roofing as well. The proposal is for a 3-bedroom dwelling as well. I don't think I mentioned that before. And now moving into, so you get a good idea of what the site is like. Here I am situated within the access looking out. So the access is just by where this bin is here. So here I am looking towards the east on Church Lane, and this heads towards Oaks Lane, which does then lead into Borough St Peter. As you can see, the road is very rural and single track in nature. Again, this is looking west towards the ex-council housing along Church Lane as well. Next, moving to the corner of Church Lane, so the council housing that was just in shot is behind me. Here you can see it's a 30-mile limit on this road, which does include the access as well. And you can see from the arrow here where the access is to the proposal. Next, here you can see the existing access, and then we're starting to move into the site. So you can see where I am taking a photo from here. Here we can see the existing agricultural building, which would be demolished to accommodate the proposal. And you can also see some of the other bits around the site, which you'll get more of a glimpse of in a minute. Next, I'm here by some house as well, and you can see the agricultural building here as well. The applicant's current premises, which is this white building here, which is the gardens. You can see here these black buildings, which are the associated outbuildings I mentioned earlier. Moving on around the site. So here we can see a view looking towards, we can see some semi-detached properties which are accessed further along Church Lane. The roof line there, and an existing menage which is outside of the red line of the proposal. Next, and then you can see the extent of the agricultural building as well here, and I'm looking out onto Church Lane there towards the access. And again, I'm currently at the stables looking in towards the site, and again you can see that summer house and the agricultural building to be demolished. So, in conclusion, the main issues in this case are the principle of the development and the proposal being in an area which is unsustainable. In terms of design, layout, neighbour amenity, flood risk and drainage, highway safety and access, ecology, trees and hedgerows, no harms have been identified. By way of background, the application has been submitted as a full planning application. The site also has an established planning history, which includes a number of previously refused planning applications. These are set out in the committee report. As aforementioned, there is a settlement boundary which does encompass part of Wheatacre, as set out in one of the first slides. The application, however, does lie outside of this defined settlement boundary and therefore is considered to be located within the countryside for planning policy purposes. Whilst Wheatacre forms part of the Toffmans, Alderby, Haddiscoe, Wheatacre and Borough St Peter cluster, this is identified within the South Norfolk Village Cluster's allocations plan. The site does not fall within a settlement boundary and must therefore be regarded, must therefore be assessed against policies relating to development within the countryside. This section of Wheatacre would not be considered to be a settlement without a settlement boundary either. This is due to the lack of nearby facilities and lack of transport connectivity. The proposal does not comply with Policy 7.5 of the GNLP, nor Policy DM 1.3 of the South Norfolk Local Plan. However, on this basis that the Council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, the tilted balance has been engaged, as detailed within the report. Future occupiers of the property would be heavily reliant on the private car to access day-to-day services and facilities, resulting in an unsustainable form of development, contrary to policies DM 1.1 and DM 3.10 of the South Norfolk Local Plan and the objectives of the NPPF. Within the applicant's submission, the agent has referred to a number of appeal decisions in support of the proposal. However, these relate to different sites with their own particular circumstances and planning considerations. While such decisions are noted, each planning application must be assessed under its own merit, having regard to the specific characteristics of the site and details of the proposal, and the relevant development plan and material considerations. The application has been assessed under its own merits, and for the reasons set out in the committee report, Office has concluded that the proposal cannot be supported. Accordingly, it's concluded that the proposal represents an unsustainable form of development in the countryside. The application is therefore recommended for refusal for the reasons set out in the report. These are namely conflict with Policy DM 1.1 and 1.3 of the South Norfolk Local Plan, and Policies 2 and 7.5 of the Greater Norwich Local Plan and the NPPF.
Thank you, Naomi. Committee, any questions? Questions only to Naomi?
Yes, please, Chair.
Sorry?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Does the proposed building's footprint align exactly with the current building, or is...
This is not a park queue.
Oh.
Park queue is where it aligns.
Okay.
I'm correct there, yeah?
Is that right?
Sorry.
Okay, yep, thank you.
So we're going to go into public speaking. We've got Helen. And Helen is from the Parish Council, just so we know. So you've been listening carefully. You've got 5 minutes. We'll warn you with 1 minute to go and give your name as soon as you turn the microphone on and start to speak. Yep.
Yes, my name is Helen Hutton. I am a new parish councillor for Wheatacre, Borough St Peter, primarily the Wheatacre area. I've come here today because I feel that I've recently moved into up to Norfolk from Kent, so I am in a very different area. Specifically moved to Wheatacre because of the community. It has a fantastic community there. We've got a pub, we do have transport, we do have a bus, we do have a fully stocked shop, we have a cafe at Wheatacre Hall, there is employment in the area. I myself work at the farm shop on the odd occasion just to help out. I can walk there, I don't need to use my car. As you can see, I am approaching older age. I wouldn't say old age. And I specifically moved to the area because that's what I wanted. I didn't want to move into a town. So I wanted to move into a village community that has pretty much everything that a town has, with the exception of too many people. So the people in the area have been very welcoming to me. The community has been fantastic. We've got a thriving village hall which serves Alderby, Borough St Peter and Wheataker, and there are lots of things happening there, all within walking distance. I have a dog. I walk my dog twice a day. I don't have an issue with the minimal traffic that runs through the village. I've never felt unsafe at all walking along any of the roads. People are courteous. They will slow down if they see you with an animal. People ride their horses in the area, all problem-free. As far as the community is concerned, Wheataker is a thriving and sustainable community. I don't think I have anything else to say.
Yes, please. Are you here today speaking on behalf of the whole of the parish council or just yourself?
I'm speaking on behalf of the parish council. We approved it 100% at one of our meetings a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I just wanted clarification on that. Thanks very much indeed.
I'm
Thank
just
you.
adding in the extra. I've recently moved here as well.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Chair.
Any more questions? No. Thank you very much, Helen. If you'd like to take your seat again. Sorry, we've got Andrea. I hope I've got that right. So again, you're pretty clued. 5 minutes. We'll warn you with 1 minute to go. Can you just pull that microphone a bit towards you as well? So when you turn on and start to speak, please give your name first for the record.
My name's Andrea Bayliss, and I am with my partner, the occupier of the neighbouring property, Church Farm. Members, thank you for your time today. We politely ask that you support the officer's recommendation for refusal of this application. The officer has concluded that the site is neither within nor adjacent to a recognised settlement within planning terms and is physically separated from the nearest development boundary by open countryside. Policy 7.5 requires development to be within or adjacent to a settlement in order to come forward. Officers have concluded that this site fails that basic requirement and therefore Policy 7.5 should not apply. It's also relevant to note that previous applications seeking planning permission for this specific development on this site have already been refused. Whilst those decisions reflect a consistent approach to the suitability of this location for residential development under Policy 7.5, whilst each application must be considered on its own merits, the repeated concerns raised in each application in relation to the site demonstrate that the fundamental planning constraints have not been overcome here. Irrespective of the fact that the application falls down at that immediate hurdle, the officer's report has highlighted additional fundamental flaws with the proposed development, which result in a recommendation for refusal in any event. The report highlights a series of sustainability concerns, which we draw the members' attention to, including limited access to services, the absence of pedestrian infrastructure and a reliance on private vehicles. Whilst there is a pub and a farm shop selling essentials within the vicinity of the site, access to these services is impractical and dangerous by any method other than private vehicle, as the routes from the site require travel along national speed limit roads with no footpaths and across blind bends. The available services also fail to provide for healthcare, schools, employment and other day-to-day needs without requiring travel further afield by private vehicle. Whilst it's been noted that there is a bus stop in the village, the officer has rightly concluded that this does not provide a realistic means of meeting everyday travel needs, as the service operates on a very limited timetable and provides no service at all at weekends. This means that any resident will be almost exclusively reliant on private vehicles. These limitations are contrary to the development plan strategy, which requires the application to be capable of supporting sustainable residential development in accordance with the development plan. Ours and the planning officer's view is that this development is not. In the officer's report, weight has been given to the benefits associated with a self-build dwelling and a 5-year housing supply, one house obviously contributing very little to that, the professional conclusion remains that the adverse impacts significantly outweigh those benefits. Approval would also risk undermining the consistent application of Policy 7.5. If Policy 7.5 is applied to a site that is clearly outside and physically detached from a recognised settlement, despite this being against the locational requirements of the policy, it becomes much harder to resist similar proposals elsewhere in the countryside, leading to increased pressure for sporadic and unsustainable countryside development. Members are therefore not only considering this application in isolation, but how Policy 7.5 should be applied in future. In conclusion, the officer has concluded that the proposal conflicts with Policy 7.5, represents an unsustainable form of development, and that the harm significantly and demonstrably outweighs the benefits. For those reasons, we therefore respectfully ask members to support the officer's recommendation and refuse planning permission in this scenario. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Yes, please, Chair.
Go on. Yeah.
Is a clarification. You mentioned somewhere in there about this national speed limit applies, and yet we saw photos earlier of a 30 mile an hour. Well, that was in this presentation, wasn't it? Am I right?
Yeah, essentially. I'll just.
Could we just have some clarification on that point then, please? Andrew, you're saying national speed limit. We're saying 30, are we? Yeah, just.
So I think we can do a part and part. So I think some roads are a 60 mile an hour national speed limit, but the one right outside the site is a 30.
Okay. Yeah, so then the services themselves, so the pub and the shop, they are both on 60.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Any more questions? No, thank you very much. If you'd like to take your seat again. And we have James. Hello, James.
Can I start with a point of clarification, because I think it's an issue.
If you sit down first,
Yeah.
I'd rather talk to you when you're sitting down. Then I'll look down on you, see?
Sorry.
Just a hint. Sorry, you wanted to cry?
It's just about the road. So there is a single road that's at the national speed limit. And in terms of the access, for example, to the pub is accessible via a 30 mile an hour speed limit. So I just wanted to clarify that.
What you're saying is the patchwork of road
Yes, correct.
speeds.
There is a 6 mile an hour speed limit in place.
And for clarification, where this site is in a 30 mile.
Yes, and there is via that 30 mile an hour network, you can access the public house,
Okay,
for example.
right, thank you. So, you've got 5 minutes to go. We'll warn you with 1 minute, and please give your name right at the start.
Thank you. My name's James Platt. I'm the planning agent on the application. Good morning, members. The application before you seeks to realise the applicant's aspirations to design and build their own home within the settlement and community of Wheatacre. This process started with a pre-application inquiry to the council, in response to which the council advised an application could be supported under Policy 7.5. Based on that pre-application advice, the applicant chose to proceed with an application. Despite the positive pre-application advice given by the council, which is not referenced at any point within the committee report, it is incredibly disappointing that we arrive in the situation we find ourselves in today, whereby the planning officer is recommending the application be refused in spite of that advice, the support of both the parish council and the ward councillor, and the absence of any objections from the consultees. Turning now to that recommendation, for the purposes of Policy 7.5, the planning officer states the site is not located within or adjacent to a settlement. The officer's assessment is very confused in this regard, appearing to acknowledge the existence of the settlement of Wheatacre, but essentially concluding that it constitutes nothing more than a small cluster of development, whilst also conflating it with the neighbouring settlement of Burris and Peter. To be clear, the settlement of Wheatacre lies within the parish of Wheatacre. Wheatacre contains various homes, a church, a public house, a cafe, and a well-stocked shop that is open 7 days a week. The settlement of Burris and Peter and Wheatacre are separate entities, each lying within their respective parishes. The officer states the site is poorly located in relation to services and facilities, whilst opportunities for walking and cycling are constrained by the absence of footways and street lighting. As mentioned, Wheatacre contains services and facilities that serve the surrounding community. By way of a comparison, the services and facilities within Wheatacre exceed those of the nearby settlements of Alderby and Burris and Peter. Settlements the planning officer, I'm sure, would confirm are acceptable locations for housing. Although Weetaker is absent of a dedicated footway and street lighting, such circumstances are not uncommon in rural areas. Borough St Peter, for example, is also without a footway or street lighting. As identified by the Parish Council and the Ward Councillor, and to the contrary of the Planning Officer's findings, residents of Weetaker walk and cycle when accessing service and facilities located there. It is self-evident that the absence of a footway or street lighting does not prevent this. To summarise the case for the application, the proposed development lies within the settlement of Weetaker. Evidently, the settlement is more than a recognisable group of dwellings, where vitality through a sense of community value and identity can be demonstrated. As a self-built dwelling, the proposed development complies with Policy 7.5, whilst the proposed development also complies with the development plan when taken as a whole. The Council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. In this case, this means granting planning permission unless any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policy in the MPF taken as a whole. The proposed development will provide social benefits through the provision of a new home that will contribute toward addressing the land supply shortfall in the South Norfolk, whilst also supporting the vitality of Weetaker and the surrounding area. Economic benefits will arise as a result of the construction phase of the proposed development. Equally, the occupation of the proposed development will provide further fiscal stimulus, and environmental benefits will be accrued through the biodiversity enhancement measures. Regarding the adverse impacts, it is noted that future occupiers of the proposed development are likely to be reliant on a private car when accessing Beccles, for example, the nearest settlement offering a full range of day-to-day services and facilities. However, there are opportunities for future occupiers of the proposed development to access local and service and facilities by foot or cycle. Equally, there is a bus service to Beccles. With this in mind, and that journeys to Beccles will not be significant in length nor number due to the quantum of housing proposed, the adverse impacts arising would be limited at worst. Taken together, and by any reasonable measure, the benefits of the proposed development are at the very least moderate and are not, therefore, significantly and demonstrably outweighed by the limited adverse impacts. Consequently, the MPPF directs the decision maker to grant planning permission. The Self-Build Act is also a material consideration. Contrary to the duties set out within that Act, the Council are unable to demonstrate that sufficient planning permissions have been granted to meet the demand for service plots in South Norfolk. The proposed development will contribute a self-build dwelling toward this unmet demand, a factor that should be afforded substantial weight in the planning balance. In conclusion, the proposed development accords with the development plan, whilst other material considerations, namely the MPPF and the Self-Build Act, indicate that planning permission should be granted. There are no material considerations that indicate otherwise. Therefore, we respectfully ask members to approve this application, subject to the imposition of appropriate planning conditions. Thank you very much.
Well timed. Well timed. Are there any questions? You mentioned at the beginning, which I found confusing, you said in a pre-application or an informal application? Was it a proper pre-application? Yeah.
Yes, I'll take that one. And say, do you want to your mic off? Thank you. Yes, so there was a pre-app dealt with one of our former colleagues as well in the team, and at that point it was very early on in the 7.5 process, and it could have been seen as a positive situation. When the application was submitted, obviously we all know that pre-apps are only informal advice, and the informal advice is the key point there. Doesn't bound the council for a future decision, and obviously we then reassess the application when it comes forward and reassess these in light of appeal decisions, inspectors' routes, etc. As obviously time goes on, the policy kind of evolves and our learning of it evolves as well. So that is why the recommendation has been to refuse.
While we're on that, self-build, as I understand self-build, we are meeting our obligations on self-build.
So not for South Norfolk, we're not. So not for self-build. So I know there has been significant weight placed on decisions from inspectors recently for that. There has been some also dismissing the case despite that being a positive as well. So they have given weight to a self-build proposal, but they are still claiming that in some situations, and saying not all, because there have been some that have been allowed, and we acknowledge that. So there have been some that still unsustainable location demonstrably outweighs that harm.
Okay. And James, one for you. There have been 3 applications. Is this application different to any of those, or is it exactly the same as the other 3? I know 1 or 2 of them were under Part Q, which
Correct,
is a different,
yeah. So
which is a different rule.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, no, essentially there were some Class Q applications that predated my involvement. There was then a subsequent application that was submitted. This scheme is essentially the same scheme as that was refused previously.
Members, any question?
Yes,
Martin?
please. I'm the only one. Councillor, but it was mentioned right at the very beginning. Could I just bring up a few points that are mentioned and ask for clarification?
Yeah.
In his submission, he has put, I note that there's been no objection from any of the range of formal consultees, e.g. NCC Highways, Natural England, and I also note that SNC Planning considers that there is a small social benefit. The design of the building is appropriate and has no adverse impact on anyone else, and has no adverse impact on any local environmental quality measures. Could I just ask for your comments on that particular paragraph, please, if you have any?
So so you're talking about the comments that were on the update sheet from this week, is that right?
No, these are the comments, if you remember, it was mentioned right at the very beginning of the presentation. These are comments that have been submitted via email from the councillor, Andy Evans.
Yes,
Yeah,
so that was the ones that were on your update sheet. Yes, so on the update sheet. So they came in, I think it was either yesterday or the day before. So they get placed on the update sheet, which is circulated to members as well. Obviously, I appreciate I've read them. There are no statutory objections in that respect, but obviously that we're not going to have a consultee who focuses mainly on the sustainable development. That is for us in our officer's professional opinion to be able to judge and assess in line with the development plan. So obviously we have the self-build SPD for the 7.5 as well, so we have to take each application on its own merits. Obviously we have identified that there is a harm in that respect in terms of the location of that development. So although there are the benefits of those minor, and I will say probably minor in that respect, that doesn't outweigh the overall harm we've identified.
Okay, that's really useful.
So on the out in the countryside rules,
Yeah.
there are no statutory consultees on that. That is us that applies that. So it wouldn't be up to Highways to say where it is. You see what I mean?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Thanks for clarification.
James, thank you. Your place again. So we're going to go out of public speaking, and we're going to go, and I can see Gary's hand up already. So Gary, off you go.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, this is one for the officer again, just to clarify something. Obviously, when we as a council are deciding what is a settlement and what is not a settlement, therefore what is inside a settlement boundary or not, what do we use as that kind of basis? Is it 4 houses, 3 houses, 1 house? What is it? Because obviously I've just been looking at some bits and pieces on the government's own page about settlements, and a settlement can be a development of houses that are scattered in a wide area, as long as it has something like a church or a public house or thing. That is then classed as a settlement in their eyes, but what is it in our eyes?
Yeah, that's fine. So we have the self-build SPD, which is the supplementary planning guidance. So there is nothing written down to say what is a settlement in that as such. Obviously, there's definition in the Oxford Dictionary if people like to use that as well. So in our respect, so I think off the top of my head, because I don't have the document open in front of me, so you appreciate that. Obviously, we have to have a level of services and facilities to constitute what is self-contained, as in terms of, in my view, it has to form part of that settlement. So can you get your local services within walking distance, for example? Is there enough there to kind of, I would say, without relying on other places? I know there is, obviously you're going to have to, but there's got to be some level of services and facilities available. Now I'll just turn that point round in the report, which states that Weetaker forms part of Borough St Peter as well. So there is a settlement boundary which is there, which is located, and I think it's about 800 metres to the east, I think, off the top of my head. So this is, in terms of policy 7.5, Weetaker does have that settlement boundary, and then therefore it's not considered to be adjacent to, due to that intervening countryside.
So basically,
So in terms of 7.5, there's obviously those two elements to it. So number one has to be adjacent to or within. Number two of that is the outside, or is a settlement without a settlement boundary. Okay, so in that sense, there can be clusters of dwellings spotted around in these rural areas. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a settlement in its own right. And so because it either has another settlement boundary further away, or instead there's not enough services and facilities to be able to make that dwelling sustainable in its own right.
Good one, Gary.
Obviously, you just mentioned those parts you mentioned about the sustainability of the area, they don't meet that thing. What would you constitute as being enough services in an area? Because obviously it's got a bus service, it's got a pub, it's got a shop, it's got a church. The only thing it's really missing, obviously, is a doctor's surgery and other bits and pieces, but then the next settlement may have that. And obviously, again, looking at what the government kind of says is a settlement, is we're saying the settlement on its thing is 3 or 4 different parishes clumped together, is the settlement, not the parish on its own, which is, in my eyes, a little bit wrong, because all parishes are their own distinct characters, so therefore the settlement of, say, well, I don't know, to say this one, but is its own right and not what is around it. Does that make sense?
So you're quoting from a national thing, whereas R is in the local plan, outside the development boundaries in the local plan, not in the national plan. That's why we put it in ours, because we didn't want the national one, I guess, to be the primacy. We wanted to build, as we've designed, settlement areas.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Chairman.
In fact, if you look at the new inspector's report for BChap, he's proposed 6 more development boundaries in South Norfolk.
Yeah, but what I meant, sorry, Chairman, is our own policy doesn't stipulate what is a settlement. It literally just says it's a settlement. Is it in the boundary? Is it out the boundary? But then it doesn't say what the settlement, what the criteria of a settlement actually is.
I think to clarify, there isn't a prescribed amount of services that need to be within it, but just to go back to what it says in the officer report, we're not looking at a settlement, we're considering it as a settlement without a settlement boundary. So it's the second part of that policy that Ellie has talked about. So yes, albeit there's a larger settlement, 800 approximately metres away, this is its own cluster of housing in its own rights, which is distinctly separate from that. And within that, there's no service provisions, it's clearly within the countryside. So that's how we've looked at it, and that's how it is set out in the report, and that's what members have to consider today.
Any more? So we're going to go to the recommendation, which is for refusal. All those in favour of the recommendation, please raise your hand.
That's 1, 2, 3. Sorry, can members put their hands fully up, because I can't quite see from here. Sorry, thank you. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, Chair, for refuse.
Against?
And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 against. So Chair, it's your casting vote again.
So I'll stay with my vote.
So that would be 5, 4 for refusal, Chair, with your casting vote.
Yeah. We've got some members who have to leave. So what I'm going to quickly do before they leave is go to page 86 and 87, just to note that all the planning committee noted the appeals that we've got and the appeals that have been with decisions. Okay, so Martin, you can leave. Yeah.
Okay. Yep, thank you, Chair. This is for a proposed mural painting in the entrance building to the car park along Market Street in Wymondham. The application is a South Norfolk Council application, which is why it's been brought to committee today. The building, which you can see in the slide there, is known as Fire Arch, and originally used to be the entrance to what was the fire station where the car park is now. The building is not listed, but it qualifies as a non-designated heritage asset and makes a positive contribution to the street scene. As a bit of background to the application, the proposal forms part of a wider local government investment in Wymondham, co-funded by both South Norfolk Council and Wymondham Town Council to deliver a series of public realm interventions and town centre improvements. The proposal has been subject to a public consultation prior to the application being submitted. Looking at the application site, some of you will probably be familiar with this, I'm sure. Clearly showing the Fire Arch building, and in dark pink there is highlighted all the listed buildings in the immediate area. The whole area shown there on the map is included within the Wymondham Conservation Area. Here we have the building again showing the view from Market Street on the left and the photo on the right showing the rear view of the building, and the arrow is pointing to where the mural painting is to go. The aim is to put all the notice boards on the other wall on the opposite side to make way for the mural. This gives you an idea of this wider street views. So you'll clearly see the mural looking west towards Beckett's Chapel as you move down along Market Street, and then the other photo showing looking east, looking towards the marketplace. This is the mural itself. The idea here is to promote the town and make people aware of the sort of key historic sites in the town. Many of you will know most of those. The Fire Arch building itself is actually in there with a small fire engine next to the Green Dragon. You can see Wymondham Abbey, Beckett's Chapel, railway station. So it gives out quite a lot of information. So people visiting the area or may not know the town, obviously you get quite a good idea of what the town's about just walking past that. The key policy considerations here are heritage and design policies in the NPPF and the South Norfolk Local Plan. Also to be considered here is impact on neighbour amenity. Also relevant is the Wymondham Area Action Plan, the aims of that, and the policy 4 in the neighbourhood plan. And we consider that the proposal complies with all these policies with no resulting harm to the existing buildings and non-designated heritage asset or to the character of the conservation area, the proposal resulting in an enhancement of both the building and the street scene. And then finally, again, another view of the street scene there, the picture of the mural next door, just to give you an idea of what the impact is sort of likely to be. The pub opposite is a listed building. There's a number of listed buildings down the street, but we don't consider that what is proposed here is going to have an adverse impact and will actually provide interest to the street scene and improve an area, on that sort of lower ground level, the ground level of the Fire Arch building, improve that area, which is probably not that great at the moment. So overall, consider that the proposal will have a positive impact, both visually and in providing information to promote the town, and therefore it's recommended to the committee that the application be approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Philip. A couple of things. There are bike stands in front of this, and there are not on the other side by the look of it. Have we thought about moving the bike stands, which, with bikes there, in front of a nice mural?
It's not something that I've discussed with Joel, who is the officer who's been involved with the community works in Wyndham, but I think I did actually mention initially there might be an idea to do something with them, whether they can be removed or perhaps painted a different colour. I don't know, but...
Can we put that as a, is it allowable to put that as a, because to me, one side, where the notice board is, has got none, and the other side where we've got this beautiful mural, and even I recognise two buildings, just seems sticking bikes in front of it is.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. They probably don't need planning permission in themselves to be moved, so whether it be reasonable to condition them, but it might be something we could add as an informative note. Yeah, I think we could probably include that as an informative note if members feel that's something they'd want
And my
to
other
see.
point is that this is a beautiful mural, and sometimes we have people who decide to do funny things and put graffiti on. Is this graffiti proofed as we did with the Trouse underpass? Because it would annoy me intensely if we did this and then somebody comes along with a spray can.
It's not something that's been discussed during the process, application process. But I mean, as has been mentioned before, committee, it could be included as a condition, perhaps. You know.
We'll allow it, yes. If you, I don't think. See if your microphone works, Joel. Yeah.
Yeah.
So two points I'm trying to make here. One is to protect the mural, and the other is not to hide it. Is that something that we could or have taken on board?
On the bike standpoint, I think it is a fair point, but I would just make the point that on the other side there is less space. The footway is narrower, so I think it'd be difficult to move those bike stands. I mean, obviously we are undertaking a wider public realm scheme, and it might be that we can put some of those bike stands elsewhere in the town as part of it, and I'll certainly consider that. That shouldn't be a problem.
You make a nice painting and you put things in front of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of the graffiti element, so the artist will lacquer it with a covering which won't prevent graffiti, but what it does allow for is in the event of graffiti for it to be removed with the right removal solvent. So that is mitigated, yeah.
Fine. Members, Ian?
Yeah, just one more question. Knowing that particular area very well, if you just come back from the main road and we're looking where past the mural, there is a current location that is set back between the toilets and that section, and that currently has, I believe, a scooter range. I would have thought that you could incorporate, with a little bit of simple redesign, you could incorporate the scooter, the existing scooter rack with the bike racks, thereby exposing the mural for its, for its true visual impact.
Joel, I'm going to leave it to you. You know our feelings about it. That's straightforward. If you could take those into account, please. Gary?
Thank you. Obviously, on the wall that the mural is going on, it looks like currently there are notice boards of some sort. I'm guessing those are being relocated to somewhere else, and I think I'm guessing one of those possibly is the town council's notice board for their own agendas.
I mean, I understand. I think I said earlier the notices from where the painting's going are just going to be removed to the other side, and all the notices will be actually on the opposite wall, as I understand it. So, yeah, they're both notice boards. Yeah.
I think it's absolutely fantastic. Is this sort of scheme of murals something that South Norfolk Council would consider working with other town and parish councils with?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we do it once, it goes well, then we can certainly look at other towns and places around South Norfolk.
That's unanimous, Chair.